What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another Mizzou football post-game show. I am your host, Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com, and today I am joined by, as always, Brayden Dowers, and then, of course, we got our good friend Tino in here, and he got the full Mizzou experience tonight. Tino is essentially replacing Connor at this point because Connor hates Mizzou, and we hate Connor because he hates Mizzou. And, Missouri beat the Kentucky Wildcats by a final score of 38-21 tonight. And I have no words, man, for just – and I mean that in a good way for the way this team bounced back after losing to LSU last week at home. You had to come back and win this one. And after the first few minutes, Kentucky goes up 14-0. It looks like this is going to be a long-ass night. And then Mizzou outscores the Wildcats 38-7 for the rest of the game. And they dominated the Wildcats pretty much after those two quick touchdowns from Kentucky. It was all Mizzou. We'll break it down for you. But first of all, Brayden, how you doing? And what are your thoughts on that game?
That was probably my favorite Missouri Tigers football win that I can remember. Like, yeah, sure, we have the K-State game from earlier this year. We have the LSU game from a couple years ago. We have all this stuff. But genuinely, I don't think that many of them are going to compare to this because, like, just the history with Kentucky and how many bullshit calls there have been, how much
oh my God
shit that has not gone our way. This was nice. Our first win in Lexington since 2013. I've not been more happy to be a Missouri Tigers football fan than I have been right now.
Well, you said it. The BS, like, just Kentucky games have been weird. It's like stuff that you've never seen called before gets called in Kentucky games with the refs. Just the weirdest stuff you've never seen happen on a football field. And there was no exception tonight because we saw it pretty early on when I think it was number 0, Deone Walker, horse collar tackled Brady Cook. And they said that at first they threw a flag and then they picked it up because they said you're actually allowed to horse collar tackle the quarterback as long as he's in the pocket. I have never heard that rule before. And honestly, if I was Eli Drinkwitz on the sideline, I'm saying, hey, defensive line, just horse collar Devin Leary every single play then if you get to him and make them call it. Make them explain their BS. That was so stupid. And then there was a very late hit on Luther Burden that they didn't call. And that pissed me off. But, I mean, we won despite it. We won despite the stupid calls and non-calls, I should say. But I want to get to Tino because, guys, Tino, he's not exactly what you'd call a Mizzou football fan, but he goes to games. He watches with us sometimes. And tonight he was watching with us, and he got the full Mizzou experience. And that was probably the most fun I've ever had watching football. And Tino was getting hyped. I think he became a Mizzou fan tonight. I don't know. What do you think, Tino? What are your thoughts on that game?
It's gonna take a couple more games than that, but even then, I've heard some of the instances and games from former and current Mizzou fans, experiences they've felt, and I'm not really sure if I can take on this kind of baggage. But if they continue to perform as well as they have today, then we'll see.
We need Tino back on for all the games because Tino was kind of our good luck charm tonight. Yeah. We got some magic from him, and we needed it because
I do not watch Mizzou games. I do not. But every single game that
you do now,
outside of popping in and out on games like last year against Kentucky, I didn't actually watch that game, but they've been undefeated every time I watch, or if I'm at the game too.
You're watching all the games now, and I know you said that you might not be able to watch South Carolina next week, but like you need to fucking whip your phone out and just turn on the game on YouTube TV or something because you have to be able to watch.
I'm going to be sitting in the bathroom at work, fucking yelling at the fucking defense.
Dude, and Tino was, because we were on Discord watching, and Tino was like ahead of me and Brayden, so he's like calling all this stuff out before we even see it. And so many times I just hear, oh, he picked it off. He fucking picked it off from Tino. Yeah. And I'm just like, I haven't seen it yet. And then I like it.
But usually
I do see it.
whenever somebody's ahead. But tonight it just felt like everything was right. Everything was perfect. Everything went so smooth after the first quarter.
It was good because it was Tino he's a good luck charm, man. That's why we need him watching all the games, because he was calling all this stuff out and it was all good stuff. I mean, the beginning of the game was kind of rough, but I mean, it took a while for the Tino magic to really settle in.
Yeah, I had to do a couple things before that shit started kicking in.
Do you want to tell the fans what it is you had to do before it started kicking in?
No, I'll let them think about what it could be. That's that special sauce. I'm not going to give up my special sauce. Come on now.
Tino, he has to get the magic dust from somewhere. He doesn't make
okay. All right, no, I do not do cocaine.
I guess I should have worded it differently, because now everyone probably thinks you do coke.
I don't do coke.
Nah.
I fucking felt like it during the game, though. I did.
You drank a Dr. Pepper.
Did. In honor of fucking Eli Drinkwitz, I drank a fucking Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, because Tino, he asked me before the game, like, Josh, what drink should I drink for good luck? What's a better good luck for Mizzou, Sprite or Dr. Pepper? And I know Drink has drank like Diet Coke sometimes, but I'm pretty sure he's drank Dr. Pepper before. So I said Dr. Pepper because Drinkwitz likes Dr. Pepper, and I think that helped out. But we'll get a little bit more into this game. So Mizzou wins 38-21. I guess we'll start with the offense. So Brady Cook, kind of a pedestrian night from him. He was 19 of 29 for 175 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. But after he got the first interception out of his system, he was pretty good after that. He was solid. He didn't make any mistakes, really. The only complaint that I have from him, and it's not really his fault, is the design quarterback runs just really did not work. Kirby Moore, the offensive coordinator, was calling those a lot tonight, and I did not like those play calls. But Brady Cook, he took it a little bit personally too after he took that hit, and I forget who it was, but somebody on Kentucky, it was on the 2-point conversion attempt, and they
getting possessed after that.
Yeah, he had that look in his eyes, and after that, we kind of just took over this game. Cody Schrader, 20 carries for 71 yards. Typical night from him. He didn't have too many huge runs, but he did have that one big one that I think that was the run that put us up 35-21. So typical Cody Schrader game. Got a solid performance out of him. And then Brayden, we were talking about it a lot before we went live, but Mizzou won this game by a very large margin. They dominated Kentucky, despite the fact that Luther Burden was basically a non-factor.
Yeah.
1 carry for 6 yards and 2 catches for 15 yards, and Mizzou still won this game by double digits. And it really makes you wonder how bad of a beatdown this would have been had Mizzou not gotten themselves in an early 14-0 hole.
Yeah, my biggest thing with Mizzou's offense this game is that Brady Cook didn't really have that good of a night. We ran a lot of cutesy bullshit.
Too many outside runs. I hated it.
Like the outside runs, and there's a couple screens. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. Like, we felt like we weren't in our bag tonight, like airing it out like we have been against LSU, like we were against Vandy and some of these other teams. We kind of went back to just what we've been doing, or what we did last year and what we did at the early start of this season, but it worked. It worked, and we got a ranked win on the road against a team that has been a pain in our ass for the last decade.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we were trying to explain kind of the lore of like Mizzou versus Kentucky over the years to Tino, and it's like like you said, they've been a thorn in our side. We cannot beat this mother effing team.
Yeah.
It's like for years, and Kentucky should not be dominating us in football. Like, Kentucky was never viewed as a football school when we joined the SEC, and Mizzou was supposed to be dominant. Like, that's a team you should be beating pretty much every single year. And instead it's been mostly Kentucky, but we talked about the weird stuff that happens in these games, and Mizzou was able to overcome that tonight. And they just, I really cannot believe just how much they dominated them. And I was confident that we would win this game, but of course I'm skeptical because it is Kentucky. It's on the road. Historically, Drinkwitz has struggled to win on the road. And when they came out flat, you're just like, man, here we go. Back to the same old Mizzou, same old ways. Drinkwitz can't get this team prepared on the road. They took that punch in the mouth, though, and then after that, they didn't look back. And, man, what really turned the game around, though, was Mizzou's offense couldn't get anything going, and then they tried a fake punt. And it's a huge throw from the punter, Bauer, to Marquise Johnson, the true freshman wide receiver who's been awesome this year. Anytime Mizzou has needed a big play, Marquise Johnson is there to make a huge catch. I think he's averaging something crazy, like 30 yards a catch. But Tino saw it before all of us did. He called that Marquise Johnson fake punt. Drinkwitz he's got a lot of flack for like not being this aggressive coach over the past few years, but his aggressiveness has really shown over the last several games. Like, he is not afraid to go for the win, and he's not afraid to take risks. And that play really it flipped the script in this game, that huge fake punt to Marquise Johnson. And it was a good ass throw too, because he was covered pretty well. I mean, it was almost a 50-50 ball, and Johnson just jumps up there and grabs it down. I don't know. Like, Tino, what was your reaction to that?
I called Eli Drinkwitz a pussy if he didn't go for it. And he called my bluff. And I'm really fucking glad he did. And obviously, as Josh has said, I'm not really into Mizzou football like that for real. But whoever Bauer is, that was a nasty fucking throw right where it needed to be. And overall, good. Like, who is it? 17? Who's number 17?
Yeah, Marquise Johnson.
Yeah, Marquise Johnson. Thank God he didn't fall on the ground and just, ran it into the end zone. Because that's exactly what that was the exact moment that changed the pace of the game. It was almost reminiscent of obviously, Houston and the Kansas City Chiefs playoff game with that fake punt that Daniel Sorensen tackled him and completely changed that game. That felt a lot like it, for real.
Yeah, it's like if you could point to one moment where this game completely changed, it was that right there. Because if they don't get that, who knows what Kentucky does.
Exactly.
Like, no matter what in this game, it is insane. Like, Josh, you kind of mentioned it earlier, but for Brady Cook to have a pedestrian night, for us to be calling all this cutesy bullshit, for Luther Burden to only have 2 catches for 15 yards, and Cody Schrader had an average game himself. The fact that our offense scored 31 points, not including the fake punt, obviously, is crazy. And
listen, if we're in all seriousness to tie this up into one big pretty present with a bow on top, the game ball is going to the defense. They put the offense in such good field position almost every single time.
Almost like another Brady.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Yeah, this Brady also has a good defense. No, that was worded perfectly, Tino, because the first couple drives really rough. It looked like they wouldn't be. And I mean, you said it. You were the first one to say it. I mean, I knew it too. But it's like, if we can just stop the run and force Devin Leary to throw, you will win this game, because they can't do anything else. And Devin Leary, he was awful tonight.
Yeah,
he was awful tonight.
2 picks today, or 1?
They throw and they completely
2.
And then the
2.
run.
For sure. Should have been 3, but whatever.
14 of 27 for 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Kentucky was 4 of 13 on third down. They've been pretty bad on third down all year long. Only 1 of 2 on fourth down, but the Mizzou defense really dominated. They came up with picks when they needed to. They were able to sack Devin Leary several times. Darius Robinson was a monster tonight. He had 2 sacks, I believe. Johnny Walker was applying pressure constantly. The blitzes were perfectly timed, everything. Blake Baker really got this defense to pull together after the first few minutes. And
Charleston still kind of iffy, and Tyron Hopper's still definitely regressed because early in the game, like on those first 2 drives.
Yeah, just bad missed tackle, like trying to arm tackle. He doesn't look like himself. I almost wonder if he's hurt a little bit.
Yeah, like Hopper's obviously not looked himself, and I think that Marvin Burks needs to be getting a lot more playing time over Joseph Charleston because Burks, Tino mentioned it, there was out route by the running back to the flat, and Burks just lit him up. That's not really a play that I've seen a lot of people talk about, but I mean, just plays like that Burks makes, and I'm not sure if Charleston makes that play.
Yeah, I also know. I believe his name is. I'll have to find it. I know he's in the defensive stats. Give me 1 second. He was a true freshman. Last name Roche. Forget his first name. But he was playing a lot tonight, and he actually looked pretty good. He has not really gotten a ton of playing time before this game.
Completely forgot
Philip
about
Roche. Yeah. Philip Roche. He had a sack and 2 tackles. Like
for our defense,
dude's coming out of nowhere making plays.
For our defense to do this without Ennis is also insane.
Yeah, no Ennis Rakestraw. Marcus Clark got a pick.
Yeah, like Ennis,
Chris Abrams-Draine got a
pick. Third best defensive player behind Chris, and I mean, well, we'll say Johnson on the defensive line. I'm not going to say Hopper anymore because Hopper's, like we said, regressed. But to lose one of your top players on defense, isn't Ennis a captain?
Yeah, I believe so.
Like, so to lose a captain on your defense and to go out there and for 3 quarters hold Kentucky to 7 points, and that one touchdown drive that they – like, the one touchdown drive that they got after the first 2 drives was –
It was really
it was just like the defense got completely deflated because the Chris Abrams-Draine pick got called back.
Yeah,
that's the
why that. And I still question that just a little bit because I felt like there wasn't enough clear evidence to overturn that. But it is what it is, and it ultimately didn't matter. Really, if they lost this game, it wasn't going to be because of that. It was going to be because the offense wasn't capitalizing on their opportunities. We've complained several times this year, even in some of the earlier games on the schedule, that Mizzou was not putting opponents away when it had a chance to do so. They would always, and it kind of happened in the LSU game. They let LSU creep back in, and it bit them in the ass in the end. But in this one, they made the plays when they needed to. And
I definitely say Kentucky away a lot better than they've put any other team away.
And like Kentucky, and like when we say that too, like it's still impressive because Kentucky is a team that is very difficult to just put away like that in the fourth quarter. Like this was an evenly matched game. Kentucky was ranked coming into this. Another ranked win for Drinkwitz, by the way, I should mention. He's stacking those up this year. But, Kentucky is a good team. And to even control the game like that at any point is very impressive.
For sure. I mean, I have been extremely critical of Drink on the road, and you mentioned it earlier. But Kentucky was probably the biggest game that I had circled this year because you had all these Mizzou fans and like all these projections, like being extremely optimistic about Missouri football. And it was like 8-4, 9-3. This is going to be our record. And I always looked at those, and every single time they had Kentucky as a win. This was the most telling game for me for Drinkwitz as a coach, because we're past the midpoint in the season. You're coming off of a big loss at home where, just big loss at home. So how are you going to respond? You've had lots of issues on the road in your past. Kentucky's been a thorn in your side forever. You're 1-2 against them. Like, he had all of these things stacked up against him. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so much more than what I said there, but you have all of these things stacked up against you. And we've been playing like these C+ B- games all year. Like we were saying, I'd say tonight was a solid B+.
Yeah. You would like the offense to be a little bit better in the red zone. You would like them to have not gotten themselves in a 14-0 hole. But
if you're playing a B+ game with all of those factors, you're a good football coach.
Yeah, and this is a good football team because there's a lot of things that this team can still improve on. Again, Luther Burden was not a factor tonight, and you won by 17. And if there's an area tonight where I think they've really improved that not a lot of people were talking about, penalties. Only 6 penalties tonight for 65 yards. Kentucky was by far the worst team with penalties. They had 14 for 122 yards. That is, Mark Stoops has got to get those guys straightened out because that is just pathetic.
I think he needs. They might need a little bit more money to get him straight.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he talked about how Georgia was able to buy some good players, and that's why they lost. Well, what's the excuse for this one? You're saying you don't have better players than Mizzou? I know Kentucky has recruited relatively well. For those that missed it, Mark Stoops was kind of panhandling earlier this week, talking about how they can't be competitive with Georgia because they bought a bunch of good players. And if the fans want Kentucky to be good, they need to donate more, which I think is just ridiculous. Like, obviously you see so many NIL collectives now that are asking for fan donations, and that's fine. But the fans are already putting in a bunch of money, just, paying to watch these games and showing up. And, they invest a lot of time into watching these teams. Like, Tino, I know you're not as well versed in college football, but how would you feel if the Seahawks started asking fans to donate so they could get good players? Would that make you donate? Would that make you want to be a fan?
It sounds like a bunch of cheapskate nonsense to me. It's that'd be like having Mr. Krabs as your freaking GM.
Obviously Mark Stoops does have a little bit of a point that it is kind of hard for a coach at a program like Kentucky to ever really compete with Georgia for recruits and stuff like that. But you don't say that because you make that's a bad look for the coach, because you basically are throwing all of your players under the bus. You're basically saying that they're not good enough. You're admitting that, when really you just need to be better as a coach. So,
panhandling frauds.
I love having Tino on our side. I love having him on our side. Also, I should say, or I should bring this up. So, On3, the recruiting service that's gotten really popular over the past year or two, their crew that they have, or their panel of analysts, they decided to put their predictions in for this game. I'll show it on the screen. Every single one of them had Kentucky winning this game for their Week 7 predictions, and I felt like their names and their faces should go up there, so they can take responsibility for these crap predictions. And I gotta call out this Zach guy on the very bottom, because he picked Kentucky to win 35-17. I'm sorry, but if you've paid attention at all to Mizzou versus Kentucky over the years, these games have always been close. And that's why I'm so impressed by the fact that they won tonight by such a large margin, because these games tend to always come down to the wire with Kentucky. But tonight, Mizzou just they shut the door on them. And
Zach looks like a virgin.
Bullshit and stuff that went not their way. But for the most part, they showed up, they took care of business, and they went home. They got in their groove after those first 2 touchdowns, and they're like, all right, we're good.
The train kept chugging.
Mm-hmm.
It had a bit of a stall there with that interception being called back, but we got back to going.
Yep.
Yeah, and I should mention, in Week 7, the Missouri Tigers are bowl eligible at 6-1. Brayden, if I had told you before the season that we would be bowl eligible by Week 7, what would you have said?
I would have said, awesome. Did not expect that. But we are right now in the season. We mentioned it before. That LSU loss stings just a little bit more now.
Yeah.
We could have been 7-0 really easily.
Yeah. It does sting just a little bit more knowing we were so close, and you could have been 7-0. And I know I was talking to you, Brayden, kind of towards the end of the game, and it's you don't want to speak too soon, but if you were 7-0 and you got through the LSU game, you got through the Kentucky game, Georgia continues to look like crap. Tennessee looks very beatable. There's South Carolina, Florida, Arkansas. Those should all be wins at this point. They need to be.
Yeah.
College football playoff?
Georgia.
Question mark?
I mean, we are definitely getting way too far ahead of ourselves,
Right.
especially with you calling Georgia crap, because going into Athens and
I'm not saying they're crap. They just looked like crap for
Yeah.
a majority of the
they
season.
haven't looked great this year, and they didn't look good against Vandy. Like, I'd arguably say that we looked better against Vandy than they did. Like, if we catch Georgia on a day like today, where we're playing like we were today and Georgia's playing like they were today, if we're at home, yeah, I think that we beat them. In Athens, though,
Yeah, that's the tough part.
I'm not that confident in our ability to beat Georgia. But if we somehow do beat Georgia, and this is assuming that we win the South Carolina game, which I want to get into in a little bit. But if we do beat Georgia and finish off the year undefeated, we go 11-1, then yeah, we're in the SEC championship game against probably either an LSU rematch or a weak Alabama.
Yeah, if there was ever a year to try and get to that SEC championship game and have a chance, it's this year, because Alabama's having a down year. They almost lost to Arkansas today in the final minutes. I mean, very beatable. LSU, I would feel good about our chances to beat them in a rematch, if that's who ended up coming out of the West. I mean, again, we are looking very far in the future, but I'm just saying that, pretty much everything that Mizzou wanted to accomplish before the LSU game, they can still accomplish even now, especially with this Kentucky win. And we talked about how the LSU loss stings just a little bit
more. We're a really good
because, we talked about how it stings just a little bit more because you were 6-1 and you could have been 7-0. But it was nice to see this team respond and bounce back the way they did after a loss, because one of the biggest things I was concerned about was letting one loss turn into two losses because you hung so much on that LSU game and winning that. You come out and you beat a ranked SEC opponent the next week. You walloped them. Like I'm saying, we walloped Kentucky. We pounced them. Like, it's just, and that's what's so impressive. So everything this team wanted to accomplish, they still can. Like we were talking about, if they lose this game, maybe go 8-4, which maybe feels just a little bit disappointing because of the momentum that you had at one point. But I mean, 9 wins is still on the table. 10's not impossible. Like, I can't believe I'm saying that. Like I obviously
10-2 seems very, I don't want to say likely, but it seems very plausible. And I'm reading a comment right now. John Jason said, I'll take another Georgia game like last year. If we go 10-2 and we play Georgia like we did last year, that's an insanely good season. That is
because
the expectations that we could have had.
I've obviously been on the drink train for a long time. Tino knows that. I mean, he sees all the arguments in the group chat between me and Connor, and then you and Connor now, because like Brayden, you were kind of on the fence about him, and he's kind of won you over this year. Or it's like, Connor can't even appreciate a win, and that's why we brought Tino on to replace Connor, because Connor is just he sold out. He's forget about him. Tino's an upgrade. But
Joshua is a verified Eli Drinkwitz truther since day one.
Yeah. Now, I did have a little bit of doubt about him after the MTSU game. And
like
that's well
1 week.
documented. You can go back and watch that. But I have been on the drink train because I'm saying.
But we said, specifically me, I said everything that we said in the MTSU game would be completely nullified if we beat K-State, and then we did.
Yeah, and now you beat Kentucky. You beat both the Wildcats this year.
Yeah.
Great. Bad year to be a Wildcat. Yeah, bad year to be a Wildcat. And also, before I continue on what I was saying, Arkansas lost.
Kansas
lost, and Kansas was ranked, so they're going to drop out of the rankings again. They should never be ranked again. Should have never been ranked. They're overrated. Screw Kansas. They lost to a bad Oklahoma State team. So
they beat K-State as well.
Yeah, which made our win against them look a little bit worse, but who cares, because you just proved yourself again with this one, because Kentucky has consistently been a very solid team. Like Kentucky, we talked about K-State and how they're probably going to win 7 or 8 games this year, regardless of the results of the Mizzou game. Kentucky's another team that, like, I would not be surprised to still see them win 8 games this year. Like, that is a very good win. Like, you could start to poke holes in the K-State win just a little bit, but this Kentucky win's legit. Like, we're enough games into the season that you can say that. We've seen they're a good team. this is an evenly matched game, and Mizzou still won by double digits. But speaking of rankings, Mizzou should be ranked tomorrow. Where, we don't know yet, but given that Louisville lost today, they were ranked. Kansas was ranked and they lost. You beat Kentucky, they're probably going to drop out, and then you're going to jump them 22 or 23 probably.
So Miami lost, Kansas lost, Wazoo's not going to stay in the top 25. Louisville's probably going to drop out of the top 25 after getting smoked by Pittsburgh. There's a couple other teams. I said Miami. But like there's definitely going to be a lot of teams that drop this week. And I think Mizzou's going to be in a really good spot. They're going to be ranked again. And I want to segue this into the South Carolina game. This is like we have to go 1-0 every week. That's how you have to look at it. I'm worried about the South Carolina game for a lot of reasons. It feels like another trap game almost, and we could very easily get caught looking ahead for Georgia. Luckily, we do have a bye week in between South Carolina and Georgia, but that Memphis and that Vandy game, those were two trap games, and we said, all right, let's get out of these alive. This South Carolina one feels a lot different because you're at home. Drinkwitz has had so much success against South Carolina in the past, and it feels like everybody's going to expect Missouri to just steamroll past South Carolina. And yeah, South Carolina's like 2-5 this year so far, and they have
lost to Florida.
Yeah, they lost to Florida. They lost to Billy Napier at home, which is insane. Like Billy Napier never wins on the road. So for them to do that, like not look good at all, I'm still worried more than I was against Memphis and Vandy because it's an SEC opponent.
Yeah.
I feel like we're going to overlook them a lot based off of prior success. And we saw what they did last year. They definitely have the talent to be a good football team and almost win football games because they gave Georgia a run for their money. Granted, who hasn't this year?
Yeah, that's true. Oh, Kentucky, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler is a good enough quarterback that he can beat you on the right day. Mizzou's defense had probably one of their most dominant performances last year against him, though, and also South Carolina's O-line is god-awful, which creates a good matchup for us. I see why you say it's a trap game, but the fact that it's at home makes me a lot less worried than I would be unless it was in like South Carolina. The fact that it's at home makes me feel pretty good about it. But yeah, I mean, obviously you can't get caught lacking.
I mean, I think it really helps that we do have a bye week in between this game in Georgia. Otherwise, like if we just went straight from South Carolina into Georgia, I would be extremely worried because then I'd think, okay, we're going to get caught looking ahead at Georgia. But if you told me, so again, assuming that we won the South Carolina game, if you told me that we're 7-1 going into the Georgia game, that again, like everything that we're saying just sounds so good. It's insane. Like could have never expected to be in this point of this year.
For sure. I forgot to do this kind of at the beginning of the episode, but those of you that have been watching, I've shouted out that SEC podcast a couple times. I've watched them a lot. And Cousin Shane, if you guys know him, he's been really big on Mizzou this year, but for his lock of the week, he picked Kentucky to beat Mizzou. But he did say that if Mizzou won, he would drink however many, or he would drink a beer for every point that Mizzou beat Kentucky by. Well, Mizzou beat Kentucky by 17 points, meaning that Cousin Shane is going to be 17 beers deep on the next episode of that SEC podcast. Can't wait to see it. Shout out Cousin Shane. I will definitely be clipping this and putting it on Twitter for you. But yeah, rough night for him. Also, his locks have been terrible this year. Almost all of his locks have been complete duds this year.
All right, well, have him lock in South Carolina next week.
Yeah, please. Yeah, Cousin Shane, can you please, if you're watching, lock in every single opponent to beat Mizzou this year? I would love that. But yeah.
Like what this guy said, Cousin Shane did that because he's 1-11 in his locks. True Mizzou fan going undercover.
First, that's what I'm saying. I feel like that's what he did, but he just didn't want to say it because then that just kind of ruins the whole thing. But,
I mean, that's what I'm doing by betting $10 against Mizzou every single weekend.
Yeah, it's like if you're kind of creating this good luck charm where if you bet on them, they have a pretty good, or if you bet against them, you have a good record of betting against them. But it's then if they lose, you get money for it. So I mean, there's at least a reason to be happy if they lose.
For sure.
I really need to start doing that.
Brayden's about to be like $80 in debt by the end of the season.
Dude.
Yeah. Well,
my parlay hit.
Well, that works.
So
he bets on enough games that he can make up for it, I mean, as long as he's not putting too much money down. I mean,
if he's $80 down off of Mizzou games alone, betting $10, that's 8 more wins for Mizzou.
Yeah, worth
it.
If I have to view it as I'm paying for wins for Missouri football, fine. I don't care.
Yeah,
sounds awfully familiar.
I'm sure that's what Mark Stoops wishes his fans were saying. I want to address this comment though from Mo Football. He says Drink has done a great job hiring good coordinators and the players like him. Good enough for me. And yeah, I mean that's why I really wanted Drink to work out, is because even when times were rough last year and also 2021, this team could have rolled over very many times and given up on Drink, but they never had, and they've always finished the season strong. What Mizzou was failing to do was put together a complete season, but in the past they were putting themselves in a hole to start the season, and then they'd have to scratch and claw to get to a bowl game. This year the tides have finally turned, and the players like him, like you said. I totally agree. And then the coordinators, it took them a few tries on defensive coordinator, but Blake Baker was pretty much a home run hire for him. I know the defense has taken a small step back this year, but still, he needs credit for tonight. As Tino mentioned at the beginning of the episode, like the defense really put this game under wraps. And then Kirby Moore has become a real asset for this team. I wasn't a huge fan of some of the play calls tonight, but I mean, if you were to grade him for the season, I feel like you'd give him an A. I mean, the offense has been awesome. They put up 38 points again tonight. They lost to LSU last week, but put up 39. The week before that, they scored 30 against Vandy. Like, that's just not stuff that they were doing last year.
Yeah. I mean, Drink has done a great job putting this team together, making sure that it gels. He obviously had way too much on his plate as the offense, as him not having an offensive coordinator before this season. So for Kirby Moore to come in and do all of this is great. I know that we were talking about at the beginning of the year, is Blake Baker going to get hired away? Now I think we genuinely have to start wondering, is Kirby Moore going to get hired away? Because people are definitely going to take notice of what he has been able to do with Mizzou, Brady Cook, Luther Burden, an offensive line that has been underwhelming. Because Connor Tollison has still been struggling a lot. I didn't see Tyler Stevens tonight. It was all Norfleet.
Yeah, it was Norfleet. Perfect.
It was nothing but Norfleet tonight. He had a really good game. Was happy about that. I mean, he's making the right personnel decisions by putting in guys like Norfleet and making sure that Stevens don't get snaps. He can't really do anything at center with Tollison, but he's making the most of what he has to work with, and that's going to get looked at extremely fondly by other schools come this next coaching carousel.
And I think if there is a coach that you have to be worried about leaving, and Mizzou's got to do whatever they can, give the guy a raise if they need to. Jacob Peeler, the wide receivers coach, they've got to find a way to hold on to him. I know there's rumors of him maybe going to Auburn last offseason, and he's becoming a very hot coaching candidate for other teams, but you've got to hold on to him because the job that he's done with these receivers, I mean, he's turned that position group right around, and it's probably the strongest position group on the team now because of him. And then the recruiting too. And you want to talk about recruiting. This game is awesome for the momentum of this program because obviously everyone knows a bunch of crystal ball predictions and future casts came in over the past week for the 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo to commit to Mizzou. And that you have to give Peeler credit for that, recruiting him. But Ryan Wingo, one of the biggest reasons I feel like he wants to come here now is because the offense has shown a lot of improvement. And it's attractive for him to come and play here in this offense. And you got to keep that momentum riding and recruiting. And then like Williams-Nwaneri, even though he's already committed, there was a world where Mizzou's season goes south and then maybe he starts to look around. But like now you don't have to worry about any of that because that's not happening. Like this team's too good. And Drinkwitz has this thing rolling. Like I always believed in him as the head coach of Missouri. He's learning on the job a little bit. Remember, they hired him when he only had a year of head coaching experience, but he knows how to recruit. He knows how to sell the program. He's really embraced the CEO role, and he's left a lot more of the coaching aspect to his coordinators, which I think is great, and it shows growth because a lot of guys, they let their egos get in the way, and it would lead to them being fired. Drink has been the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, I think that Drink definitely did have like just a really big ego, especially last.
And he still has a little bit of an ego. Like I got to throw that in there, but he's willing to admit when he's wrong.
It got in his way last year, I think, a lot because you could tell that he was getting pretty snarky in press conferences and just kind of getting fed up with how he was just cycling through all these seasons, just going 6-6 nonstop. But like just looking at these last 5 games on the year, you have South Carolina at home, on the road against Georgia, at home against Tennessee, at home against Florida, and on the road against Arkansas. You should go 4-1 in that stretch with how those other minimum.
And like Georgia is like, if you beat them, that's gravy. But I feel like most people are expecting a loss. And then that's your only like real big road game. You go on the road to Arkansas, but Arkansas might not have a head coach by that game.
Yeah. With how terrible they've been.
Yeah. Like you got to beat them this year. You can't fall flat to end the season by losing to that team because they've just been bad. But Tino, I want to ask you this question because obviously, you don't watch a ton of Mizzou football, but you got a taste of it tonight and you get to watch these players play. But I'm curious, are there any players, being a Seahawks fan, looking at this from a draft perspective, that you'd like to see end up in Seattle? Who stood out to you tonight?
Well, I did. There was one player in particular, and at this point, we have an overabundance of this, but I feel like we could make something work, and I believe it's Chris Abrams-Draine.
Yeah, the cornerback.
Yeah, he's pretty nasty with it.
Yeah, I feel like he could be a perfect slot corner for y'all at the next level and kind of replace DJ Reed, and then you can just have Woolen play all over, and then Witherspoon outside. That's how I look at it. But
yeah, 3 tackles on the night and a pick. That's pretty.
It's kind of good. It had 2 picks.
And he had 3 assists. No, the other one was called back. I'm pretty sure.
I know.
That was
the
other one.
Thing. He should have had 2 interceptions.
Oh yeah, he should have had 2 easily. On offense, though, and this isn't somebody that I would say that Seattle should look at. Mainly just who I just kept seeing and would always, feel as if we're in good hands whenever this motherfucker got the ball, was Theo Wease Jr.
Yep.
Weezer. I thought his last name was Weezer because like the jersey like was crimped up, and so I just saw WEASE, and then I just saw Junior, and I was like Weezer. Anyway, he had a pretty decent night. 6 receptions for 58 yards and a touchdown. Like he was one. Was it him that I said he's like a Mike Williams comp where he's just like he's either getting you a first down or a touchdown, or just he's always showing up whenever the offense really kind of needs it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what he's done all year, just very timely plays. And like you saw him get a touchdown tonight. And all of his touchdowns that he's had this year, because he's had a handful of them this year, have been like grown man touchdowns where like they just lob him a 50-50 ball or something or a fade to the back of the end zone. And like he just knows how to come down with it. And then like the great thing about him too is that if you just have him run a vertical route and you chuck the ball to him, he'll draw a pass interference call. And he bailed us out with one tonight too. I forget at what point in the game it was, but we needed a first down. It was like 3rd and long, and Brady Cook chucks it to Theo Weiss, and he draws a pass interference. I don't know what his draft stock looks like, but I definitely think he'll at least get a shot in the NFL. I want to say he was invited to the Senior Bowl before this year. If not, he probably should get an invite, but I really like him because I feel like he could be like the perfect just red zone package guy in the NFL.
I said this earlier, but David Moore, being a Seahawks fan as well, he kind of reminds me like him, where David Moore just had these big catches, would go like you throw up a 50-50 ball to him every single time, and he's going to come down with it 75 to 80% of the time. So those 50-50 balls are more 80-20. And then besides that, he's going to get you a couple pretty big plays throughout the game, and he's going to convert a couple third downs, and he's just going to like – tonight is a perfect stat line for him. Just 6 catches, 53 yards, and a touchdown. That is the kind of game that I think you can expect from Theo Weiss at the next level if he does go to the NFL next year.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I feel like he's a guy too where he's not good enough to be like your true number 1, but if your number 1 were to get hurt or something,
perfect number 4.
He could be a good spot starter in the NFL. I feel like
he's going to be an absolute perfect number 4. Something that Dominic Lovett will not be.
Yeah. Yeah, they were talking about Dominic Lovett earlier today, too. I know that SEC podcast was tweeting about him and how he's kind of disappeared at Georgia. I know we got into it with Connor today about that, but someone said something like, oh, well, Georgia spreads the ball around, unlike Missouri that force feeds Luther Burden. And I'm like, we have 4 receivers that have more yards than Dominic Lovett this year.
Yeah.
Even Mookie Cooper has more too. And we didn't really mention him, but he came up with a few big plays tonight. Number 5, little guy, Tino for you, because I know he made a couple big plays tonight. I know you're not too familiar with all of our players, but like he's been awesome on 3rd down for us this year, and he's really come alive. I know he has over 300 yards on the year, which is actually a career high for him. But
Mookie Cooper has taken the Brett Bannister role.
Barrett Bannister, yeah, kind of his thing on 3rd down.
Yeah, no, he has taken the Barrett Bannister role of just getting third downs.
Yeah, but the nice thing about Cooper is he provides much more after the catch than Barrett Bannister does. Yeah. And he's kind of turning into the guy that Mizzou fans thought they were getting when he committed here. I want to talk about this comment.
Big.
Go ahead.
I remember Mookie was one of the first big commits
to the drink era. Yeah. But Bass Fishing Fuel says, if we are being honest, this game was not as close as the score shows. After the first quarter, Mizzou beat Kentucky in damn near every category. And you're not wrong about that. And that's kind of what you're saying. Like, this beatdown could have been a lot worse for Kentucky. It took a while for Mizzou to get going, but once they did, like, Kentucky really couldn't stop them.
Absolutely. I was rooting for some garbage time touchdowns to portray a score that would accurately represent how this game felt and how this game was played. Like I'll say this for one. Definitely one of the more like fun. Josh mentioned that this is one of the more fun games he's watched, but for me as well, like there's maybe after those first couple drives in the first, there really wasn't any moments outside of a couple dumb plays that just were some brain dead moves,
uninspiring play calls.
Uninspiring play calls and just dumb little QB I don't even know what type of plays or designs was going down, but just some dumb stuff on like 3rd and 7, and I'm like, what is this? And Brady Cook's trying to get active on his feet and crap like that. But other than stuff like that, it was one after the other. It kind of felt like it wasn't really real at certain moments. I'm like, okay, surely they don't get another fumble recovery, and then boom, like 3 plays later, they didn't really they really didn't let Kentucky's offense get on a roll outside of like the first drive, and then they got a BS touchdown to make it 14-0 with good field position. But Other than that,
second touchdown was off of the interception. So Kentucky really only had one drive.
Successful offensive drive.
Yeah, like they really only had one genuinely successful offensive drive. That's
Yeah. See, Tino, this is why you need to get into college football, because stuff that you've never seen happen in football games just happens. And like some of these weird play calls that are just terrible actually end up working, kind of like the 2-point thing. Like I feel like Brady Cook really should not have gotten that, but he did. So
yeah,
like I said, you got the full Mizzou experience, but it was awesome. And I mean, it was hilarious too whenever Nevis went out there to kick a field goal, and like Tino's ahead. He's ahead of all of us, and then I'm ahead of Brayden. And then I'm like, there were some plays where like we're stressed out. I'm like, all right, Tino, don't say what happens. And then I say what happens, and Brayden gets pissed at me. But it's like so. It was so funny too. Whenever I'm like, Tino, don't say anything. And then I think it was like a QB draw in the red zone, and I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And I'm like, shut the fuck up.
But that's why I say like that's some of the most fun I've had watching Mizzou game, and then we come out with the dub too. So
I told both of these. I told both Brayden and Josh before the game even started. I said, "Hey, this is like my second time watching a Mizzou like football game at home. Like if I'm watching a Mizzou game, it's either at the game or I'm just bored at work and just peep the score or peep the game on my phone every once in a while. But this is like my second time sitting down watching the game. Mind you, the first time was during that LSU game in 2021.
No, just 2020.
Yeah, or 2020.
2020.
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah, the LSU win in 2020 or against LSU. I mean, and so I got so far Mizzou's got a pretty good track record when I'm watching the game and actually paying attention.
It's funny that the LSU game was like one of the games you taught or mentioned that you watched, like not watching Mizzou football very often. Because like if you picked this game in 2020 LSU, you'd be like, damn, Mizzou's a pretty good football team. And like, oh, this is what they do all the time. They just win. And it's like, that's not really how it is. I am kind of disappointed though that the one game you watched turns out to be a Luther Burden dud, because obviously and I know you already know he's awesome. You don't have to see it in this game, but
I was saying it at the end of the game. I was like, man, I still have yet to see like a good deep bomb to fucking Luther Burden just to kind of seal the game or just put some points on the board. But I feel like Theo Wees or even Marquise Johnson kind of played that role a little bit today.
Yeah, that's why, again, it's so impressive as you did this with not really getting anything from Luther Burden or other receivers stepped up. Continues to be the strongest position group on the team. And there's some good ones too. Like defensive back is pretty good. I mean,
he kind of spread the goods pretty decently. I mean, we got 6 receptions for Theo, 2 for Marquise, but both of them were averaging both 22-yard passes, catches or whatever.
Averaging 22 a catch, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Brett Norfleet with 4
Brett Norfleet was
awesome. And Mookie Cooper. But man, watching Brett Norfleet, I was getting like, was that one big catch where he ran for like, I don't know, was it 20 or no? It was the
got down to about the 5-yard line.
Yeah, like that big run. I was like, man, I'm like, this is some bullshit the 49ers run all the time. And I was like, all right, so this offense looks like it knows what it's doing. And they were calm and cool and collected. They didn't play anything extravagant.
Which is not the norm for Mizzou. And also, if you would have watched last week, even like the tight end position sucks because they had Tyler Stevens out there, who's this slow-ass transfer from Buffalo, and he dropped like all 4 targets that he had. Or he had 5 targets, and he did catch 1 for a first down. I remember that. But the other 4, he dropped all of them, and they were wide open. So I'm glad they were just like, screw it, and they started throwing Norfleet out there. Norfleet actually went to high school at Francis Howell, which is like the same school district that I went to, and he played like 20 minutes from where I live. And so it was really cool to see him commit to Mizzou. And now he's playing a huge role as a freshman. But he just needs to be the permanent starter for the rest of the year. No more Tyler Stevens.
That Max Weisner from Tino's school is going to be the backup now. And we have a show me football tight end room at Mizzou.
Well, and then also I know Tino went to school with Josh Manning.
Yeah,
Josh Sam, and it's like I like Josh Manning. He was a 4-star recruit, but with how stacked we are at receiver, the dude might never see the field.
We'll see. He's pretty. Whenever I went to 2 Lee Summit high school games, and both games he had some pretty gnarly stat lines. Even though I'm pretty sure they were facing some garbage high school teams, which I obviously take every high school game with a grain of salt because it's a bunch of kids, you know. This isn't like serious, but he's pretty saucy with it. Like he knows how to cut some people up.
They were talking about him maybe making an impact as a freshman before the season and in fall camp, and then we just haven't seen much of him yet. And the only reason I'm concerned for him not seeing the field is because this recruiting class that we're bringing in at wide receiver most likely is going to be maybe the best we've ever had. With Wingo, maybe Flip McClellan from Ohio State, and then you have James Madison, the 4-star from Florida. Like, yeah, it's going to be competitive though, which is good.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Josh,
Rats, we have a lot of depth, and they need to sharpen iron with iron type of thing.
Yeah, same thing that they do at all those other big schools that churn wide receivers out year after year in the NFL. What were you going to say, Brayden? I
said put up that Ryan Horse helmet comment.
Oh, yeah, just came in.
Yeah.
I'm a K-Stater when it comes to college, even though I went to KU for a semester, then UMKC. But damn, Missouri is fun to watch right now. Whoever your corner safety is with those interceptions, I'm imagining he's talking about Chris Abrams-Draine, who we talked about earlier. Yeah, he's one of the best defensive players that we have. He actually leads the country in passes defended, and he has 4 interceptions on the year. I'm thinking he should be a 1st or 2nd round pick. So, yeah, nice to see other people tuning into Mizzou football. But, yeah, I think that's probably a good stopping point to get to. We've been going for about an hour. Mizzou pulls out the dub. They'll be taking on South Carolina next week. But enjoy this one, Mizzou fans, because this is a huge win for the program. I guess I'll answer this one last question from but I'll answer this one last question from Ryan. He says, is he in his final year? Yeah, I think he could have gone last year, but decided to come back for one more year. I believe he's a senior. Now, obviously, the eligibility is all over the place now with that COVID year that they give out. But, yeah, he's probably going to be going to the NFL draft after this year for sure. He'd be kind of crazy if he didn't. But, yeah, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Mizzou fans can find this. Thanks to y'all for tuning in tonight. And then, of course, Brayden, I'm sure he's already going to say it. Go watch Show Me Movies. Go watch Show Me Movies.
My movie reviews.
Yeah. And then Tino, you got any social media or anything you want to plug?
Nah, not yet.
All right. Well, with all that being said, we're going to sign off. Again, like, share, and subscribe so more Mizzou fans can find this. You can check out my work on showmefootball.com. But we'll see you on the next one. MIZ.
ZOU.